Welcome back to our Work Path podcast with your host, me, Joe Rigi. And today we have Amelia Monroe Carlson with me as my co-host for today. Amelia, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing very well. So for our audience today, I want to let you know that not a topic that we haven't really spoken about really on our podcast. It's kind of off topic for us, but it's a topic that deals with neglect and also abuse. A mother who's on our podcast today, she reached out to our Warpath about a case dealing with her family, again, with neglect and abuse in regards to a school. And we were kind of her last straw of hope, it felt like. And again, a Warpath usually doesn't do this. However, I did feel that she was sincere, she was authentic, and she was telling the truth. And so I said, let me see if we can help. So I reached out to Amelia, and so Amelia started digging into things. Now, a little bit of a background here. Bishop Riker Catholic School is a small parochial school located in Waco, Texas, under the direct supervision and guidance of the pastor of St. Louis Catholic Church. It was founded in 1954 by the Diocese of Austin, and its academics include offering advanced placement, dual credit, honor courses, and a partnership with the University of Dallas. Its grades range from pre-K through 12th grade with a 16:1 student to teacher ratio. It touts a promise statement of come and be set apart and principles of unity, relationship, joy, excellence. However, students say the culture of the school is anything but joy, excellence, and being set apart. The mother of a former 7th grade student is speaking out after her daughter says she was bullied, exposed to pornography, and students tried to force her to engage in homosexual acts with her at school. The mother said her complaints to school officials were unanswered. No one took any action to protect her daughter after the issues were raised, and she's wanting to see changes made to protect the students who are still at the school. Lauren Wamward, following her 13-year-old daughter, Madison, being bullied, feeling unsafe, and being pressured to view pornography and participate in homosexual acts with other teens. She says the decision to pull their children out of the school came after 2 months of trying to get school and diocese officials to step to protect her daughter, as well as the other students, and to generally create a Catholic identity and culture within the school. Now, our Warpath, Amelia Carlson, who's on the podcast with us today, has been digging into this situation for the last couple of weeks and put together an overall picture of what has happened. For those wondering, okay, why is our Warpath doing this? First, I didn't do any of this investigative work. However, Amelia did do this work. And for those that aren't familiar with Amelia's work, Amelia graduated from the University of North Alabama with a degree in broadcast journalism. She has worked as a journalist in newspapers and been the editor of the Bulletin Times. She has also been a digital content producer for NBC's Memphis affiliate, WMC Action News 5. She has received 7 press awards, including awards for Best Investigative Journalism, Best Single Features, and Best News Coverage. Amelia also worked as a case manager for the Department of Children's Services, handling cases of child abuse and juvenile delinquency, where she received the Child Advocate of the Year award. So for those wondering about the credibility behind this investigation, there's a lot there. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. If you want to give your story, I think the audience would appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. Our family just recently moved to Waco. We were feeling a little cramped with the growth of our city, so we moved in July. And we had been at a Catholic school, wonderful Catholic school, and we were just looking forward to continuing that education. What we found, however, was the Catholic identity was completely missing. The support from the administration regarding anything from curriculum to bullying was non-existent. The priest's presence was also non-existent. So we tried to, out of respect for the administration, tried to work with them in the beginning. When I first, filed the complaint and offered, these kids need help. What can I do to help? And teachers and I had gotten together and we're going to start, an after-school program for kids. But the administration just didn't take action, didn't move forward. So basically I was just going up the chain, contacting people and just trying to, no one ever spoke to Madison. So just trying to help her voice be heard.
So, Lauren, let's get back to the beginning and kind of give us a rundown of like how all this came about, how you kind of became known about like there was even an issue.
I was just cleaning one day and Madison's diary was on her dresser where it normally is. And, I found it and it was open to a page and I happened to see some content that was just very inappropriate. And so read further and immediately emailed the principal, contacted my husband, and we got a response from the principal saying, I already knew some of this content was happening at school, which kind of took me aback, like, oh, you already knew pornography was present. You already knew that the inappropriate use of cell phones, you already knew about bullying, and nothing had been put in place to protect the kids. So when I contacted them in November, it was just really eye-opening. But again, he said he was concerned. So we kind of waited to see what they would do. And they really did nothing, nothing at all. The priest wasn't notified. Other parents weren't notified. It was just, we felt really alone. But we continued to work with the administration. Specific details came to light about a month after our initial report in December, and I reported them again to the principal, and again, no action. So that's kind of where we were left in December, and then I reached out to the diocese.
So on November 18th, that was your first contact, and that was with the principal, right? Rob Whitmore,
Yes.
right?
Yes, ma'am. Whitmore.
Whitmore. Okay. just for context sake. So the initial email, here's what it read, because we've obtained copies of the emails. Here's what it read. It says, good afternoon. I wanted to ask if you could please give me a call as soon as possible. Nathan's your husband, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Nathan and I have found some disturbing information out regarding Madison, and I'm needing assistance with proceeding. I promise I will not take up too much of your time. So that was the initial response, and that was the initial request, and that's the one you said he responded to, right? And said he basically already knew there was an issue.
Yes, ma'am. So he was aware there were same-sex relationships at the school. He was aware there was pornography. He was very aware that their cell phone policy was not being followed, but from every admin, including the priest, it was, well, we don't really know how to get that under control. And that's where it was left.
Yeah, that's the really striking part for me when we were first kind of talking about this story, is that this is a Catholic school. He knew this was going on. And so first it's shocking because it's a Catholic school. This shouldn't be going on in a Catholic school. Why do they have phones? Why are the rule of you can't have a phone? Why is that being broken? Why aren't they turning in their phones? So that's a cause for concern. And also he knows that these relations are going on. He knows that people are viewing pornography and these are young children. So it's a concern when you see that, and it shocked me. It's like, whoa, they knew all this was going on, yet they never thought to inform parents about it. So that was extremely shocking for me to kind of understand.
Yeah. So after he initially calls you, you didn't hear anything else from him, right?
No, ma'am. I contacted him a week later. I think we had the school had a break for Thanksgiving. And then I contacted him right away and just said, I just need to follow up with you from what my initial contact was in November, or 2 weeks ago, before the break. And I mean, we would have meetings, or I would see him and say, hey, is there something I can do to help? Is everything going okay? And it would just be very short answers. No one at the time was made aware, like the teachers weren't made aware of what was going on, which is concerning for me because they're around them. They're the ones who are there and can help. And they they had no idea.
So then on December the 19th, that's when, now, in between your first contact in November and December, you not only found out more details from Madison, but you were able to find out like the names of the individuals doing this, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's this lengthy email that we're not going to disclose, only because it has minors' names in it. But I do want to pull out a few portions of this email, because it almost goes from, hey, I found something disturbing in November, and I need your assistance, with like, look, I got a serious problem. And so December 19th, here's some portions of that email for the portions where we've worked around some of the names. But it says, I'm very sorry to write this email over the break, but I have information that just came from Madison that is very disturbing and I feel needs to be addressed immediately. To clarify, this is information regarding our conversation about a month ago regarding pornography and same-sex relationships occurring in 7th grade. Madison agreed to go along with these other students' plans at first of participating in the pornography and the sexual acts. Madison did not know what these sexual acts were, and the other 2 students explained that they were fun and enjoyable. They pressured Madison to agree to perform sexual acts together, but before there was an opportunity for a physical situation, Madison finally told the 2 students that what they were looking at on their phones and what they have done with other people are bad things, and told them not to speak to her about it again, and that she would never participate in anything physical or verbal that was inappropriate. These occurrences are mostly during the passing periods of Madison's locker. Most of the situations occur during the passing periods, from my understanding. My daughter's innocence has been taken away. I do enjoy many things at Riker, and I would love nothing more than to see Madison graduate from Riker with her friends, but at what cost? If this is just middle school and we can't get a handle on basic human dignity and respect now, I cannot imagine enduring 5 more years. So that's just a portion of a lengthy email. And I wanna just ask for a second. That's an email you wrote, right? In addition to all of this other information, but hearing it back and hearing almost a plea of help, right? That went unanswered, really, from people who were Catholic. What are your feelings about it?
Well, initially I was shocked to hear that it was so widespread and that they already knew about it. These poor kids. This is not a kid problem. This is an administration and adult parent problem. And if you set boundaries, those kids are going to push them as far as you set them. And no one was helping to bring them through this, to the faith, and show them that, God's intentions for love and sex and or even just basic human dignity and how they treat people. And I had honestly had conversations about how kids treat each other at that school with the principal very early on in the year before this happened. So I was kind of upset, but more disappointed that, hey, why aren't we doing something? And what can I do to help?
And something that I found interesting, obviously, and this goes to your credit, you weren't going at this as, I'm trying to get something from the school. This isn't one of those cases where someone's trying to get something from the school. Your email, and then further information that we do have that will show people as well, is you're asking for help. All you want the school to do is address the situation appropriately and to end the situation, because it needs to end, but that's all you're asking for. You want students to be safe, you want your children to be safe, and you want the school to address the situation. That's all you were asking for. And so, as we'll see as we continue, this isn't being done. But I think, again, to your credit, you weren't trying to get something from the school. The only thing you were trying to get is the school to discipline itself, discipline the students, and teach them the Catholic faith by leading example and by incorporating that into their curriculum. So I think that's to your credit. And I think to people that see this, it's not, they'll be able to look at that and look at your perspective, and the emails, how you write them, they're respectful, they're sincere. And that's simply all you want, is the situation to be addressed.
Yeah, I didn't go in there demanding anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
really don't looking back on it, like, I mean, we look at the overall picture and you and I, Lauren, have gone back and forth for quite some time now. And like, I still don't understand how you got to this point.
I don't
Like,
either. I can't. I have no idea. We just asked for accountability, really. And
Right.
honestly, I thought it was such a huge missed opportunity for a priest who is over the school. I mean, he has responsibility for these children and their souls, and it's such a missed opportunity for him to guide them. I mean, this world will eat them up in 2 seconds, but to guide them
Yeah.
and protect them and just show them, what God has for them is beautiful, and it's not what they're seeing. And they really needed help and not to be left alone.
Do you think that the school misread you, in the sense that, do you think they thought you were trying to get were they trying not to address situation because they thought you were trying to get at something, you were demanding something, or was it simply just, is this just classic Catholic school these days?
Unfortunately, I think it's classic Catholic school. Parents really need to be more vigilant wherever they take their kids and just be involved in their daily school lives. It's not somewhere where you can just, that's the school's job. It's our job first as parents to educate our children.
Hmm.
And we really need to take more responsibility for that, I believe. But no, I don't think I was, um, none of my meetings were ever confrontational. My phone calls were never confrontational. My emails
Yeah.
were not. I never demanded anything or said, if you don't do this, I'm going to pull my kids out. I did make them aware if the campus wasn't safe, that I couldn't bring my kids.
Which is
But
totally understandable.
that's it. But it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. I didn't threaten. So I prayed a lot and discerned a lot about what to say, because, as a mom, you can have those emotions right away, like, oh, I need to protect my child.
Yeah.
But I really tried to look at it from all sides. And even speaking to one of the other child's parents, and just reaching out and trying to make sure that that child was okay as well.
so how did Rob respond to that email, to your December 19th email?
He said he was concerned. He didn't like that this was happening on his campus, but to me, it was a little odd because he already he already
He
knew.
knew
I mean,
about it.
in
Exactly.
November, everybody knew that there was pornography being, at the school, and everybody knew that Madison had been bullied. So he said, which I believe he was concerned. I just feel like his hands might have been a little tied from those above him. And he did offer to meet with us and discuss options on how to move forward. So I was looking forward to our meeting, but it didn't turn out very well.
So tell me about the meeting.
Well, January 3rd was the first day back from winter break. So we did not send our children that day because I needed to make sure that the environment was not going to be the same. We weren't just going back to the same unsafe environment across the board. And the meeting was okay. He did say, I don't approve of this and I want to do something, but there was never a resolution of, well, this is how we're going to do it with the cell phones. It was always a question of, I don't know how to do it. Because he said he had tried to ban cell phones before, but Mr. Evans didn't allow him to, because he was worried about parent backlash. So I feel like Mr. Whitworth's hands were probably a little tied.
Yeah.
And we didn't really get clear answers on anything.
So Blake Evans is the president of the school, right?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point, after not receiving at least assistance from the principal, not receiving something that you believed where your children would be safe, and you had more than one child at Bishop Riker. So you reach out to Blake Evans, and you also reach out to Father Ryan, who was the priest over the school, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So in an email dated January the 4th, you sent President Blake Evans and Father Ryan the following kind of short email. But it says, I need to speak with both of you ASAP about my daughter being sexually harassed at Bishop Riker. I will not be sending her to school until I'm confident she is safe. Please contact me as soon as possible. And then you give your phone number. So Blake Evans eventually did respond to, and offered to meet with you. But did you ever hear anything from the priest?
Never. No, but I should know, I forgot to mention that Mr. Whitworth did promise to inform the teachers that day. We met with him on the 3rd before I would send Madison back. He said, I will inform the teachers today after you leave, which was in the morning when we met, and then I will have a meeting with them today at 2:30. So he said he would do all of that in order for us to send our kids back the next day on the 4th.
But that didn't happen.
No.
How did the teachers find out about there being an issue?
I emailed them after I found out that when I picked my kids up on the 4th, there's like 30 minutes between, there's 2 campuses. So the lower campus is elementary and middle school, and then the upper campus is across the parking lot, and that's high school. And, the teachers and I had formed great relationships, and we talked, and I said, well, I hope today was a positive change. And she just looked at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I talked to her about it, and she said, oh my gosh, she said, I had no idea. She said, none of us have any idea what you're talking about right now. And so my stomach just kind of dropped, and I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. No one's aware of what has been happening. And she said, no, I wish you would have known back in November, because I would have been on top of things. She said, I would have made sure, even if it wasn't specifics, I would have made sure that there were no cell phones out, and I kind of feel like that should have been happening anyways.
Right. It's already in the policy that there's no
Yes.
cell phones, correct? So why aren't the teachers already cracking down on this? Because it's something, obviously that we've seen that's caused a problem. I do think, again, we get to see a reflection of how the school is run. The teachers aren't even aware of what's going on, which this is something in every school. The teacher should be in the know. What's going on in the school? What students are doing what, in order, again, to keep an eye on them. Like she said, if I had known this was going on, I would have kept an eye on it. But even though they knew there were phones, I do think that, again, it's not like you're going over people's heads and things like that. You're taking the proper steps in order to make the school not only aware of what's going on, but in order to maybe hold them accountable and get them to do the right thing. So it's not like you're barking at people. No, you're simply letting the teachers know, well, if they're not going to let them know, this is what's going on. Just if you guys can be aware of what's going on, watch out for what's going on, know where to prevent this. So again, it's to your credit what you're doing. You weren't barking demands. You're just trying to keep your children and other children safe, and other children safe.
Yes, that's all I ever said. I said, we have to help these kids. Because what Madison relayed to me was, yes, this happened to me. She's like, but what I realized is that everybody is watching porn at school. Like, they think it's no big deal. They go home and watch it. They come here and watch it. Like, it's horrible.
It's not an isolated incident.
No,
this is something that's going on. And again, it's something the school knows. The school knows this is going on, which is so, I guess, disappointing. That's the only word to describe it. Yeah, it's scary, but it's mostly disappointing because you're giving your children to a Catholic school. And when you do that, you leave, you go to work or whatever it may be, and you're hoping that they're instilling the Catholic faith in them. And then this is going on. So it's pretty striking. Going forward, January 18th, you spoke to the superintendent of the schools, Misty Poe, who works for the diocese, correct? How did that kind of go?
Well, I had emailed the bishop, and
Okay.
The prior Thursday, I spoke to her on a Monday, and it was okay. I had we kind of had a familiar relationship since our daughters went to school together before this year, so it was okay. And she expressed some concern, and she was I thanked her because she was the first person to ask how Madison was.
Yeah.
to even say, is Madison okay? How is she doing? And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that no one else has even asked that question.
Yeah. I
So
know.
it felt like to me like, oh, we're going to get somewhere with this. The
Yeah.
only thing we're asking was accountability and maybe some changes in the policies, or definitely some changes in the policies is what we were looking for, and getting the kids help with this. So I was confident in speaking with her at first, but then it just kind of dropped off from there.
Well, and let's back up and put this in a little bit of context, because this is one of the more striking things to me, I think, especially when you're speaking of a Catholic school.
Yeah.
So all of this began, your initial contact with them began November 18th, that email, which was followed up with the principal by a phone call. So you spoke to him at some point. You had talked to him. You had sent information to Blake Evans, the president of the school, all between November 18th and January 18th. And in 2 months time span, you've talked to at least 2 school leaders, and nobody's even bothered to ask you how your child is doing who went through this,
Including the priest.
including the priest. And so you have to get to like the 3rd level, like you have to get to the superintendent level.
Yeah.
Before somebody even says, hey, by the way, how's the victim? And all of this.
Yeah, I mean, and he was also Father Ryan was also our parish priest. So it wasn't like we didn't know him or see him after mass or have some sort of, relationship. So I think that's what really hit our family hard.
Yeah, because he's supposed to do the pastoral care, right? Regardless of whether he has any control, as the school has alleged, regardless whether he has any say in the discipline or whatnot, as a pastor and your spiritual father, then you would think that he would be concerned about somebody who's a victim of bullying and sexual harassment and pornography.
Right.
Yeah.
You would think.
You would think. I mean, I would think that's priest 101, but maybe not. Maybe I didn't go to seminary. Maybe not. But so to back up a little bit, that January the 18th phone call was early in the morning, about 9ish, right? 9:30,
Yes.
something like that, I think. And then you finished the phone call with the superintendent, Misty Poe, and you speak to your husband, and this is within, again, a 2-month time span, and then you guys make the decision to pull your children out of Bishop Riker. But this is not, as you said, I think initially, like you get a complaint in November and you don't get an answer a week or two, so you just jerk your kids out. They had 2 months to fix the problem.
It's been 3 months now.
Yeah.
All you needed was somebody to speak up and say, we're going to enforce the policy. And that obviously didn't happen. I don't know.
It's crazy.
Okay.
It's crazy when you think about it. All they have to do, this isn't a complicated situation. You're asking for the situation to be addressed. All they have to do is enforce an already existing policy that children are not bringing phones to school, which is a pretty easy system. The children come into school, they have their names of who has phones, they check them in. That's pretty simple. And then you address it with, they know who the kids are, whether they suspend them or expel them, that's up to them, obviously. But that's all that needs to be done. They address the situation. And like you have in one of your emails, I think it was, or maybe it was on one of your phone calls, you didn't care what, like how it was addressed, in the sense that like they need to have this punishment. You weren't saying there needs to be this punishment or that. All you were saying is, listen, you need to address the situation. I don't know how you go about it, or you don't need to let me know how you are going to go about it, but it needs to be addressed. So it's pretty simple. Enforce that existing policy, and then address the students and go from there. But again, it's just shocking thinking about it. That's all they had to do. 2 simple steps. Yet now we're going on to the 3rd month. It's been 3 months now, and still we're in this process of some kind of, I don't know, we're in the middle.
They're still trying to figure out.
Yeah,
is what I've been told. They're still trying to figure out how to implement this. And I was like, well, then why? I don't understand how anybody's safe if you don't know how to do it. So.
Exactly.
if you can't enforce a cell phone policy, what kind of policy can you enforce, right?
And
Right.
right. I was just asking for, I mean, I wasn't even asking for the kids to be expelled or anything. Like, I think I actually think that would hurt them. I don't want that. I think yes, they need consequences, and the school needed to have a firm stance on bullying and pornography and what happened, but the kids needed help, and they needed to be led in the direction of our faith, with good, men of faith, and who had the moral courage to stand up and say, this is wrong. And I was just asking for transparency.
Yeah.
I'm a parent. I would want to know if something happened like this, because maybe I could contribute in some way to help
Mhm.
the school. So they didn't tell
Well,
parents.
and we did reach out. I had sent a request to everyone who was mentioned who had any kind of role or part to play in this, and we had sent requests front to the principal, to Rob, to the president Blake Evans. We've sent requests to the superintendent Misty Poe. We even sent requests for comments to the diocese, to the bishop. The only one apparently who decides to answer. We did get a response from the diocese that we're going to show. It's from Camille Garcia, who is the director of communications for the Diocese of Austin, which is the diocese that Bishop Riker is under.
And
I'm not going to read.
for those wondering, the documents that we're showing, or any audios that we'll read and things like that, all that information we'll have available for you. We'll just have a link in the bio, but just so everyone's aware of that.
So I'm not going to read the beginning part, because it basically just is an introduction to herself as a communications director, and that the school doesn't disclose disciplinary action and things of that nature. But I do want to read a portion. You've seen this letter, I think, Lauren. I sent it to you, but it says, it appears that she has not provided you with an accurate account of the events, and you do not have a good understanding of Father Ryan's involvement. The matter was reported to and was reviewed by the school president, Blake Evans, and principal Rob Whitworth, who are laypersons with many years of experience in school administration. Father Ryan does not oversee the day-to-day operations of the school or the enforcement of the disciplinary matters at the school. He serves as the pastoral and spiritual father of the school and the adjoining parish. Father Ryan spoke with her in a pastoral setting after the matter had been reviewed by the school's administration. Additionally, the school administration consulted with the diocesan superintendent of schools, Misty Poe. So I'm going to stop right there for a second, and then we're going to look at the way she concluded it. But I find it interesting that we had just spoke about Father Ryan's part as a spiritual father and a pastoral father, or lack thereof. And that's what the diocese touts, right? They're basically saying, hey, he's not involved in all of this. He's just a spiritual father and the pastor. But he wasn't that, right? To you or to Madison. He didn't even ask about how Madison was doing.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he didn't ask at all.
But she concludes by saying this matter was carefully reviewed and considered by the school administration. Okay, I'm just going to stop right there, because that in and of itself is enough to say that, okay, you really. But let me ask, do you really think it was carefully considered? Right, like carefully considered. We know they obviously even at some point talked about it, but do you think they really even considered it a problem?
No, I think they considered me a problem because I was bringing it up. But no one ever, what I never knew is that they concluded the investigation. I didn't even know they were really doing one, because no one ever asked to speak with my daughter. And I even offered, I said, would you like for me to come in with Madison and you can speak to her? Several times, to Mr. Whitworth and to Father. And they both said, Mr. Whitworth said maybe at a later date, but Father just said, no, we just don't do that, which I was confused by. But
they did talk to the other children who were involved, who were accused of doing it. So yes, we don't talk to the victim, but we talk to the perpetrators.
And then they say that I have the facts wrong, when I have the story from the victim and all the details. There's always that truth in the middle, but they never got the whole the whole truth of the matter.
Yeah, we didn't want to talk about it.
Well,
Yeah.
and in transparency, there is a string of emails between myself and Miss Garcia where I asked her that very thing. And I said, look, I mean, there's always 2 to 3 sides to every story. We're trying to get the entire picture of the story. So if she's telling me something that's wrong, then you correct me and tell me what the truth is. Well, I never got that answer. I always got that, well, she's blaming the priest for it and Father Ryan doesn't have any control over it. Okay, well, you can argue maybe that Father Ryan doesn't have control over the disciplinary and he leaves it to somebody else. But if that's the only thing you are basically saying that she has wrong, then you're not seeing the issue of the picture, right? Because then you're
Yeah.
basically
Right.
admitting everything else was fine. And then when I pushed her on if there's a pornography problem in the school, then she wanted to attack us and basically say that we weren't legitimate Catholics because we were causing division.
Yeah, to this day,
Is-
no one has asked to speak to spoken to Madison.
That's
And
crazy.
no one has ever let me know what, I also wanted to know the big picture. I mean, the full story, what happened and how I could help better educate, Madison, in any way possible. And so it wasn't just, I'm just want her side. I wanted to hear the entire thing too, but to this day, no one has ever said anything to me about what was concluded or what the situation was said to be.
We're 3
So
months in already. I think what they're hoping for, if I had to take an educated guess, that you're just gonna be like, okay, nothing's gonna happen. I'm just gonna shut up. That's what I think they're hoping for.
Right. And to be honest, I had those thoughts, but it's really not in my nature especially when it comes to kids and children.
Yeah.
I cannot just sit back and allow something to happen to them without just trying to help them and be their voice. So
Well, and part of that was Madison, right? Madison wanted something changed for her friends and for the other students, right?
Yeah.
yes, that's what she told me. She said, we had already pulled them out of school on the 18th. So it was that week we were home, and I have to tell you, that was a very difficult week. She's a girl who she's a social girl and she's an athlete. And she enjoys all that. She enjoys talking to her teachers and coaches and friends. So it was a difficult week, but she came to me just upset and said, I know I did the right thing. I don't know why something's not happening. I did it for my friends because they're in trouble. Like if they think this is okay, they're in trouble. I did
Yeah.
it for my friends and I don't want any other kids to have to go through what I did. She said, Mom, I don't see how any good came of this. So I can't let her think that, she's not worth standing up for and fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a bit of an audio problem when we were test running this. And so we're not going to play the audio clips of these phone calls, but just for everybody's context, we do have audio recordings of all 3 conversations that you had with the superintendent, Misty Poe. And in those conversations, Ms. Poe even admits, yes, there's pornography in the schools, and almost kind of like a nonchalant, well, yeah, everybody deals with it. It's just a thing, right?
Right.
What I find interesting is through all 3 of these conversations, you finally get her to admit that, yes, Madison's a victim, and yes, pornography is in the schools, but they seem to completely ignore, even through all of this communication, they ignore the bullying part. It's almost like they don't even care whether she was bullied, right? But I am going to read kind of a transcript of the audio clips we were going to play, and the audio clips and all the complete phone calls will be on the website. But this is a portion of an phone call that you had with her on February the 14th. Now, this is again a month after you've taken your children out of the school, right? And to back up a little bit before we read this, on the day that you took your children out of the school basically said, oh, well, the kids aren't in the school any longer and they've been withdrawn, so we're done with the investigation. We're good.
Yeah, I just got a phone call saying we interviewed the last child and that's it. There was no, here's what's been concluded, here's when we'll have an idea of what steps we'll take moving forward. Nothing, no resolution.
But they didn't interview the last child because they hadn't interviewed the victims yet.
I know.
Yeah, that's true.
But so they interviewed the ones accused of it, and on the same day, and Misty Poe even says on one of the phone calls, well, I mean, it was basically like you took your kids out of the school. So it's almost like it's your fault that they said, we're not talking to Madison, and you took them out of school, so we're done.
Yeah,
Like
what are we
there's no
supposed to
need to
do?
protect other students, right? But here's a portion of that phone call. You tell Miss Poe, I appreciate you calling me, but I guess I just don't know. Like everybody, when you go and ask them, speaking of all the leadership, a question, they just don't really have an answer. I don't feel like they are really able to give you an answer at all. Misty Poe responds by saying, well, in some cases they don't. Like, why didn't you talk to Madison? I just didn't. They just didn't do it. Well, now, if I don't show up for work one day and my boss calls me the next day and says, why didn't you come to work? And I'll go, well, I just didn't do it. I mean, I'm not going to be keeping my job very long.
We won't be there.
I mean, and Miss Poe, references in your phone calls that she's a mom, right? Just like you. And if your children come home and they say they didn't do their homework and you ask them why, well, I just didn't do it. I mean, that's not going to get too far, and
Yeah.
but it's almost like they just are okay with saying, well, we didn't do it. We didn't do it. Like, I mean, there's no plan to fix it and make sure it don't happen again. There's no apology for saying we're sorry we didn't interview the victim, which is investigation 101. But it confounds me to think, again, we have to remind ourselves that as bad as we say public schools are, like this is a Catholic school we are speaking about.
Where you're supposed to come and be set apart is what their whole mission
Right,
statement
where
is.
you're supposed to be set apart.
Set apart from what?
Certainly not from the public schools, because the public schools could probably do better at communication than the Catholic schools did.
I don't know.
But there's another audio clip, and this is I believe the first audio clip we have of the phone call between you and Miss Poe, where this is her admission on that there is pornography in the school, and Misty says, I think this is what you were saying. Seeing pornography happens in all of our schools. It happens in every one of our schools, and it's just society that we're fighting. Well, yes, it does happen in the schools, but it's almost like a nonchalant, well, it just happens. We're just
it was very, listening to that clip, you remember I reached out to you right away. I texted you, I said, she just mentioned that there's pornography in our schools, like it was no biggie. Like, man, there's pornography in our schools. It's like, wait a second, what? I was shocked because, again, it was just very nonchalant.
Yeah, it really was.
It's almost like, again, you're Catholic. And I mean, let's rewind and think. I mean, you would think you take pornography seriously in your schools when you're the very church who's had to endure sex scandals throughout the years, right? But they didn't. It's just like, well, everybody else is doing it, so we're going to do it, and it's like, again, what are you set apart for? Because you're certainly not set apart to be different. You're just as bad as the public schools. But on February the 14th, which this is the last phone call between you and Miss Poe, right?
Yeah, so these were supposed to be follow-up and with answers to my questions that I had to her about the situation.
Yeah, because she supposedly took your list of questions and went to Blake Evans and went to Rob and all of them to supposedly, and went to father and supposedly got all these answers right, which were really kind of fluff answers. I call them non-answers, but they were answers. So here's where she talks about them concluding the investigation without even speaking to Madison. And she says, either way, that was the last child they needed to speak with. And so they were able to speak with that child and their parents on that day. And then you had withdrawn. And so in some cases, it's just like, well, she's gone. We are going to have to wrap it up where it is. Oh, well, she's gone. So we just quit.
Yeah, I mean, not that I had been in communication with them for months or that they didn't have my information to contact me and let me know or update me. I mean, there are ways to reach out, but
it's like, well, you pulled your kids not because you're like, we're done with the situation. You pulled your
Right.
kids because you're waiting until the situation is resolved in order to put them back in. It's like knowing you knew there was a fire in the school, so you kept your kids home. But what they wanted you to do is just send your kids into the fire and we'll figure it out as we go. That's not going to happen. No parent is going to allow that to happen. So it's just strikes me, and people will understand this when they listen to the audio, that it's like, well, you have to look at it from your point of view. You think the school is dangerous in a way that, well, it is dangerous because of the thing that's going on in it, the things that are going on in it. So it's your right, and it's something that every parent should have done, is you're not going to school until the situation is resolved. So again, it's just shocking, because we think this is happening in public schools, and then it's like, no, this is happening in Catholic schools now as well.
Well, my husband is actually the one who said, I called him right after speaking with Ms. Poe, and he said, Lauren, we cannot keep them there. He said, after our meeting with Father on Friday, he, to our face, told us that the dignity of the accused will supersede anything. And when I asked, well, what about Madison's dignity? He really didn't have a response. It was more like well, of course, her dignity will be taken into account as well, but we will always preserve the dignity of the accused first going forward. So we're not going to make any changes.
Yeah. Do you think he believed you? Do you think he believed Madison? Even though he never spoke
He
to
never
her?
talked to her. I don't know. I would
or
like
do you
to
think because above him, I mean, the schools for the diocese, do you think all of a sudden they're telling him to just shut up about it?
No, I honestly think that Mr. Whitworth, I know him and his family, got to know them, and I feel like they are very genuine, good people. And I don't think he had the power to enforce things. I think his directives came from Blake Evans and Father.
Yeah.
I think his hands were really pretty much tied as to what he can do, even though, the diocese says, oh, they weren't. I saw him day to day at school, and I had conversations with him so frequently. And I could tell the type of person he was. Those never happened with Father or Evans, even when we tried.
What about how have other parents kind of responded to this? Has anyone else taken their kids out of school, or any other parents trying to address the situation, or what's that kind of like?
That's a hard one for us. We had made good family friends, and we spoke to them about what was happening, but the time between November and January. And they were supportive. And we even had one family who went to meet with Mr. Evans and saying, you need to have a strong stance on this. We can't have our kids in a school like this. And then all of a sudden, as things kind of got, more, I began to speak out about it. They were gone. They haven't contacted us.
Wow.
No one has said anything. Yeah, it's been really tough, especially on my kids. We moved to a new town, they've made friends, and then because no one wants to stir the pot or make waves.
No one wants to stick up for their children, to stick up because they don't want to be called out, or maybe their children are part of what was going on. They don't want that to come back to their family. So it's just crazy that, I don't know. I think it's to your credit again, the courage you had to actually say, well, I'm sticking up for my daughter, and I'm going to do whatever I can to protect her soul and to protect the souls of the other children in the school.
Well, that's my job as a parent.
Yeah,
I mean, I have to
right?
answer God, and he gave me those children to get them to heaven, and that's my sole purpose, and others. So that's just kind of how I view it. And but honestly, after posting on social media, I had parents who I didn't even know reach out to me and just ask for, are you okay? How's Madison? Checking in. I've never met these people.
Yeah.
And so we have uncovered some other friendships, and I'm not saying that nobody's caring. I just think that a lot of people just lack the courage.
People do lack courage.
And for our faith, they just need to be convicted in the truth, and that's all
And
we're trying to do.
I think a lot of the times, I mean, Madison stood up for she said, I'm not doing this. Like, you can't pressure me to do this anymore. So if you look at it in a certain way, Madison had the courage to do that because you've had the courage to instill in her the Catholic faith. And so you've taken stances in your own home probably that have added to that, that have helped her do that. And so if you look at other, I'm not saying this is what happened to their parents, but I'm saying a lot of the times when you look at other situations, people don't have the courage to stand up for this stuff because they aren't living their Catholic faith in their homes a lot of the times. And so it reflects on that. And again, it reflects well to you because Madison had the courage to do that because you've had the courage most likely to stand up to things in your own home, even whether that just be small things. But it's clear, and I think people will understand that with listening to this podcast, looking at the emails and listening to the audios. But yeah, it takes courage, and Catholics don't have courage anymore, which is unfortunate.
So,
yeah, right.
referencing your social media, I had to smile when you referenced your social media because that apparently really stirred the pot for the school, right? And it almost seemed like they were more concerned with the public image than they were the safety of your daughter.
Which if it had been concluded already, they shouldn't have had to worry about any of that.
Exactly.
Right. So after you posted, in a bit of a background, you posted a post on Facebook with a photo of the priest, and basically just in short synopsis talked about how they weren't doing anything and they weren't addressing the issues and there was problems and safety concerns in the school. In short, well, there was a response, all right. But apparently it wasn't to you.
There were two. That was the second one.
Okay. Well, there was a letter that was sent out to all the parents of the school. This was not to you, but you obtained the letter. And it's a pretty lengthy letter from President Blake Evans. But I just wanted to kind of mention a couple of parts. And again, this entire letter will be on the website as well. But I find it striking in the second paragraph of the letter. He says, recently a concerned parent reported an incident involving the inappropriate use of cell phones by a few students at the school. Possessing cell phones during school hours contradicts the policy in our student handbook. Then he goes on to say students have to turn them off and whatnot. Well, turning a cell phone off is different than possessing a cell phone.
So unclear.
But ultimately, at the core of it all, ultimately they appear to be trying to water this down to just an issue of kids having cell phones at school and you being mad that somebody has a cell phone at school.
Mm-hmm.
Because then he goes on and says that Mr. Whitworth concluded his inquiries and investigation and took appropriate action with the students involved, which we'll get to in just a second. But and then they go on to emphasize their core values and talk about basically they make you out to be some kind of mad parent over a cell phone.
Right, that I was raging mad and yeah.
Because somebody had a cell phone. And that really wasn't even the issue, right? I mean, yes, they were using their cell phones to view pornography and to try to bully your daughter into doing same-sex sexual acts at school and things, but that was just kind of the means that they were doing it with. But that you weren't mad that they had phones.
No, I mean everyone has a phone except for, I mean, my kids don't. But everyone has a phone there at the lower campus, which I don't understand why at the lower campus you need one. Maybe high school because they have different needs. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're allowed, I guess.
Well, and real briefly, they did finally, at least to some degree, confirm that they had taken some kind of a disciplinary action toward the kids who were guilty of this. But tell us what they did, because I find this ironic. Tell us what they said they did to these kids. And they weren't specific, but they kind of gave you, Misty Poe gave you an idea of what their disciplinary actions were.
I'm trying to remember. I think she said that they took the phones and they looked and didn't find anything.
which is called a delete button.
Delete your history.
I know, and I was like, okay.
And so she goes on to say that she couldn't obviously go into detail about which kids get which disciplinary actions, which is fine. But she did mention that they were put on a probation status, and that if that they were basically warned that they couldn't do it again. So basically, with middle schoolers, forcing people to do same-sex acts and bullying people and risking their lives, to bring them into the office, we slap their hands and tell them bad kid and send them back to the classroom.
Don't do it again. If you do it again, you're in trouble. Yeah, that's basically what she said. And I was just completely, well, I didn't need specifics about the kids. And that was something she always said, well, I can't give you specifics. I've never asked for specifics. I believe that's between the school, the parents. I understand that. I wanted to know what they had improved going forward. What can I tell Madison that they changed because of what she did, and how, when she spoke up, it made a difference for the kids at her school. And she couldn't give me anything. There was really nothing like, oh, well, they'll get a warning. And I'm like, a warning? That's like if you're tardy, I think, or so there wasn't any harsh stance or anything, or strong stance against bullying or harassment or even the pornography. There wasn't a stance on any of that from the school.
So where I mean, you're dealing with this not only with the Catholic school you were sending your children to, but with your parish, because you were going to the parish attached to the school. This was your parish. And so how does something like this impact your faith, not only for you, but for Madison and your kids?
The faith is our foundation. My 5-year-old goes to adoration with us. She's been going forever. We would go to daily mass. And our family has honestly just been struggling in all aspects. We're struggling with all coming together, both in our everyday lives and in our faith lives. We've gone through plenty of tough times in the past, and we've always gone to church as a refuge, from those trials. But I feel like in this situation, coming from the church, we're just having to rebuild that trust. One said, just completely start over. It's been pretty hard and scary. We have just had to trust in God and believe that, his plan was for the betterment of our family and our faith. So we are looking into new parishes. Like I said, it's a small town. So we have one we're going to try again this weekend, and we'll just go from there. Trusting God through this process. I mean, I believe he's going to bring something good from this. He always does.
And it is courageous, because people leave the church because of this stuff. And so being able, in a time where your family and you and your husband are undergoing a lot of suffering, and of course you have to be strong for your children because they're undergoing suffering as well, it's a time that the devil wants to say, like, this happened because of the church, this happened because of God. And it's a time where the devil wants to convince people to be angry with God. And so I think, like you said, your foundation is the faith. And so being able to be humble enough to recognize that and to understand that, we're trying to get the situation under control, but we kind of just have to trust God. I think that's something that a lot of people aren't able to do after certain situations that happen. So again, it's courageous, and I'm hoping something will come out of this. Obviously it will. God takes great situations and he does something with them, and he also takes situations that aren't very good and he does something with it. So it's definitely, again, just leave it in his hands. But I'm hoping, maybe us even just doing this podcast will get the word out, and hopefully it could affect something in a good way.
Yeah, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for y'all doing this, and I really appreciate it. Madison has a voice, and you guys really helped with that. So thank you. It's made a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, getting the message, I was looking at it, I was thinking to myself, like, we've never really been involved in like investigating stuff and things like that, but there's something was just like, okay, we need to help this person.
Desperation.
And so I was like, we need I was like, I'm going to get you in touch with Amelia as soon as possible. But again, yeah, I'm hoping that people see this and people, you know, understand what's happening, and maybe there's a good change that comes about from it. But at the same time, I mean, just know that you're in our prayers. We're gonna keep working with you to see if we can try to get something done and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we can do our duty to the best of our abilities, and like you said, just have trust in God, and everything will just come into place.
Well,
Yes.
and I think that, and Joe and I had talked toward the end of this podcast, we're going to throw up a screenshot with some resources for parents who are dealing with bullying and pornography addiction. We're going to throw up a few stats because regardless of whether Bishop Riker or the diocese wants to diminish it, the fact of the matter is that bullying as well as pornography is a serious issue, and it leads to serious consequences. Your daughter was strong enough to stand up and take a stand for her faith, and like Joe said, that is a reflection on how she's been raised. But there are a lot of kids who are dealing with bullying who it leads to depression and suicide and violence and long-term impacts. And pornography leads to other sexual sins and other issues that take you away from God. And so, I think it's important to recognize that even if somebody else wants to diminish or kind of water this down to just a cell phone issue, it's really it can become a life and death issue. And Madison was strong enough to take a stand, but there may be other kids at Bishop Riker or somewhere else who aren't that strong, and it leads to other issues. And so that's our desire, and we will have resources available. And we'll work with you guys to see what we can do in the long term, and see if we can make some differences.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And for those listening, please share the podcast, get the word out. Again, part of what our Warpath does is, if you go on our Instagram, if you go on our social media, we're calling out people, and we're trying to hold Catholics accountable. We're trying to hold ourselves accountable. We're trying to hold family accountable, our friends accountable, and Catholic clergy accountable. And so we have an unfortunate situation, but we're trying to fight it, and we're trying to make something good out of it, bring something good out of it, and bring about positive change. And so comment, like, share it, keep Lauren in your prayers, and Lauren, you'll be in our prayers. Again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.